Brian Schottenheimer just finished his first trip to Oxnard. We'll tell you our expectations for the first year head coach next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we are answering your Twitter questions, including what will the Cowboys' final record be in 2025? Who is the next Nate Thomas for Dallas? But let's start with this question from Evan, a longtime listener. He wants to know, what do you guys need to see from Brian Schottenheimer this season to trust him moving forward? And what did you think about his first Oxnard trip, first training camp with the Cowboys?
This is a great question. And I know I say that not having a precise answer because this is going to be a conversation, but I think it's important that we start to have this conversation, right? Because I think, if we're judging everything based on whether or not you win the Super Bowl or not, then you're going to go through a lot of coaches, a lot of administrations very quickly. So we kind of need to build a consensus on like, what is a good season for Brian Schottenheimer? What's a successful season for Brian Schottenheimer? And even maybe more important than that, like, what's the bar the minimum bar he has to clear to come back, right? I think that for me, a lot of it has to do with how the team actually looks, how the team responds to him. And I think that that's also kind of an answer to the question about training camp, right? Is that I think I can tell you and I can describe to you the differences in a Brian Schottenheimer training camp versus the previous administrations. I can point out where there's differences and where there's likes and dislikes, but I can't really tell you how successful it is yet until we've kind of had the results come in. So I think it's hard for us to say they had a good camp or that Schottenheimer did a good job without really kind of knowing the results a little bit more. So
let me ask you this. What did you like about Schottenheimer's camp? Because you were there on the field.
Yeah.
What did you like about this camp and what didn't you like?
I did like a lot of we talked about the energy and the vibe of it, and I think that they consistently were able to maintain that even when they got tired. They were kind of maintain a level of pep in their step about doing everything. I think there was a level of physicality in this camp that seemed a step above what we've seen since the changes in the CBA. That I think manifested itself in a very real way with injuries at certain times, but also I think the hope is that made you maybe a little bit more physical and tougher football team than you were last year. But again, we have to see the results to know for sure. I would say that I liked those things. Things that maybe I didn't like as much. I don't put a ton of stock in one-on-one situations, or in those kind of compete stuff, because that's just not necessarily, unless you're an outside corner and a wide receiver, and there's certain situations. There's just not a lot of pure one-on-one situations necessarily in the NFL, and certainly not at every position. But I think having those compete periods, maybe this is selfish because it's easier for us to see that stuff and just to see them out there competing. I think it helped with a certain amount of evaluation, maybe not in exactly what they're going to be doing, on game day, but sometimes it's good to put an offensive lineman in a disadvantageous situation and see how they respond to that. So I think I would have liked to see a little bit more of the kind of one-on-one compete periods, but outside of that, I don't think I have a ton of like obvious complaints without knowing how the results kind of turned out.
I've been to a lot of different training camps over the years, and they're all, for the most part, the same. And it's because it's factored into the CBA. Like, there's only so much that you can do. There's only so many days you can have padded practices. There's only so many padded practices that you can have in a row. You're only allowed to be out on the field a certain number of hours. So they're structured the same, right? But I will say I did like the energy of this one. It felt like the guys were fired up. It didn't seem like, this third week we were in the dog days of August and people were dragging. Like, we saw the energy and the tempo up. Again, will that translate to the regular season? I don't know. I've been to, because I'm local here, I've been to a lot of Pittsburgh camps that have been really high energy and tackling and physical, and it helps you to start the year. But by the time you get to December and January, your team's done. Like, you just have nothing left. I'm curious to see what it looks like for the Cowboys this year.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can definitely say that it looks different. So, and that's good, because honestly, like, if it had looked the same, that would have been troubling, right? I can't say that as much as it can look different. The training camp did look different. Now, as far going back to the kind of expectations part of this question, and what is, should be the standard here, I think it matters, how the health of your team looks throughout the season and where you kind of deal with injuries and how the team deals with injuries. That's going to factor into this. I think how the team responds, and do they play for Schottenheimer? Is there any point when things don't look good? You've lost maybe a couple games in a row or something. Did the team quit on Schottenheimer, or are they still, willing to fight for him? I think how he calls the game as an offensive coordinator, I think, is also going to be a big factor here, because it's one of the most consequential aspects of coaching that you can have. And it's just kind of a secondary part of his job besides being the head coach. And we haven't gotten a lot of proof of concept there yet, right? We've only know his time as previously as a play caller in Seattle and his other stops, but we haven't actually seen that part of the Schottenheimer administration play out yet. That's not something that actually happens in preseason games either. So I think that's going to play a big factor, but I think, it's a lot like a lot of things. It's easy to put, numbers down and like goals down. But I think ultimately it's going to come down to what the results are, combined with what does it look like? What did you overcome to get to those results? Those are all going to be factors.
Yeah, and you're right. It's not a win-loss record. I mean, ultimately, that's how Brian Schottenheimer is going to be judged throughout his coaching career. And I mean, he could have some awful seasons, but we think he's a really good coach. But if he's not winning, it doesn't really matter, right? So there is a tipping point. However, one of the things that I want to see, I'm going to give you an example. I remember in 2017, and I'm sure a lot of Cowboy fans remember this as well, Tyron Smith went out for 3 games, and the Cowboys couldn't move the ball on offense, right? Mike McCarthy, who I think is a good coach, not a great coach, dealt with a bunch of offensive line injuries throughout his tenure in Dallas, including several to Tyron Smith. They had in 2022 a rookie left guard slide over to left tackle, and their offense didn't fall to pieces, right? That's one of the things I want to see from Schottenheimer is, hey, backups are going to have to play. Like, you're going to have injuries. Are you able to overcome it? Do they make it where you can't even function on offense or defense? To me, that is like one of the telltale signs of whether you have a good coach. Are the backups ready to give you at least adequate football?
Are you recognizing that you need to make adjustments, and are you capable of making those adjustments?
Yes.
Like that's another aspect of this that I think kind of ties into what you're saying. Like, they need to be able, that this is what coaching is, right? Like, getting into the season, recognizing, oh my gosh, we were right or wrong about this part of our team, and then making adjustments to smooth it out a little bit. I think those are all key elements of being a coach, not just having a plan, but having a plan when your plan doesn't work and you need to adjust. That's a key part of this that really is going to tell what kind of coach Brian Schottenheimer is going to be.
And that's what one of our biggest knocks on the Jason Garrett tenure was, is they were just so slow to react and to adjust. And by the time they did it, often it was too late. I thought McCarthy did a better job of that, but Schotty's going to have to be even better than McCarthy if he wants to make this work with the Cowboys. All right, let's answer some more Twitter questions, including who could be the next Nate Thomas, the guy that doesn't do much this year, but has a big role in 2026. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, Landon and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. And to kick it off, they've just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team each week is eliminated until there's only one team left standing. And with the new season right around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. And if you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We got some more questions. This one from Gorn, another longtime listener. He wants to know, which player for you guys is this year's Nathan Thomas? Somebody that you maybe can't keep on the active roster, but don't want to lose, who might have big plans for you down the road.
Yeah, and there's always these guys, right? And there's always like a guy that like flashes enough that you are super interested in seeing if you can develop that, but you also kind of sweating it out while you're potentially cutting them to try to get them through waivers with the idea of like maybe bringing them back next year and them taking a big step. Thomas is a little bit different though. He's a late round pick, right? A guy that developed a mysteryitis, a Cowboys flu, as been referred to. And was able to be stashed, right? So who's the guy that's going to kind of fall into that category this year? I mean, I think a couple guys probably potentially could fall into that. I wonder if Tommy Akingbisode is a guy that they didn't necessarily see enough from to, roster and because of actual issues at the top of the depth chart at defensive tackle, they may have to kind of go long on other bodies and not be able to carry a developmental kind of defensive tackle guy. So I wouldn't be shocked at all if he ended up getting cut, made it back to the Cowboys practice squad, or potentially hurts his elbow, opening a jar of pickles or something, and finds his way onto the Cowboys roster throughout the year, and then maybe comes back and is more of a factor in kind of the middle part of the rotation of your defensive tackle group. He just seems like a guy that has some tools, but just really needs a lot of development. And defensive tackle is a position that usually kind of takes a little bit longer to develop. So maybe he's a guy who comes back next year and is a factor.
Yeah, well, I was going to say another guy that the Cowboys kind of did this with before Nathan Thomas was Brock Hoffman. Go look at like the transaction history between the Cowboys and Brock Hoffman, and it is like a CVS receipt. I mean, it is incredibly long. And he was one of these guys that kind of bounced on the roster, bounced off, but it was clear they liked him and they wanted to keep him around. And now look at Brock Hoffman. He started 7 or 8 games last year down the stretch. He was great in the preseason game. And now you feel like you've got one of the best backup guard centers in the league. So there are going to be a couple of these guys. I wonder if like Jay Toia, if we're going to stick with defensive tackles, like there's something there, but I think he needs to get a lot stronger. He seems like the most ideal candidate to be like, oh, hey, Jay, your ankle's hurting? No, it's fine. Are you sure? It's hurting. Why don't you go spend a year on IR getting a little bit stronger, and then we'll see you back in 2026. He seems like a target as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jay's a guy that they're going to try. They have to figure out where his timeline is, right? Like, is he a guy that you feel like either you can make game day inactive and that by the end of the season he's kind of gotten to a spot? Because I think you're talking about strength because he's being pushed off the ball and double teams. I tend to think it may be more of a pad level issue. I don't know why.
Whatever it is, right? Like he just needs more development.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. And so I wonder if like they'll kind of angle that like, do we feel like it's worth it to keep him? But he may catch it on by the end of the season. But if they don't, if we continue to kind of see what we saw from him in the other preseason game, I would imagine that they would probably just try to find a way to, give him some long-term development on the team as opposed to risking it all to try to get him on the team if he's not actually going to help them.
Well, and I know there's people thinking, well, the Cowboys have no defensive tackle depth. Why would you want to do that to a guy right now? Because there's a chance they just don't think he's ready to play this year. And rather than subjecting a draft pick to waivers, you could put him on injured reserve. It would mean that he wouldn't get to play at all this year, but you're still keeping his rights for the next couple of years because you do believe, hey, with our team, with our strength and conditioning program, we can turn him into a viable backup defensive tackle. He's just not going to be ready at any point this year.
Yeah, and let me be clear. I don't think I'm ready to kind of say that quite yet, but I think that he is certainly in striking distance of being in that area, right?
Well, like, and I would say that the bottom 4 or 5 guys in the roster are all kind of in that range, and I just think he's one of them that we're circling.
Yeah. I think I exactly. I think he's probably like, the top end of those guys, right? Because they are still trying to figure out whether they want to have him on the roster, like, game day. But I do think that if they decide, no, the timeline's just not working out, that he would probably be the top of the list of guys to figure out how he stays on the team without being on the team.
All right, I got another one for you. What about Johnny Cornelius, the Cowboys late round pick from Oregon? He's one where I really like what I saw on Saturday. Like I thought he played pretty well, and from what I've seen from some of the clips, the one-on-ones, like I think there's some talent there. But I wonder if they feel like if Terrence Steele were to go down, we want more of a veteran. Like I don't know if they want to have Tyler Guyton, a second-year guy coming off a knee injury, or Nate Thomas, a second-year guy who is a late-round pick, and then another 7th-round pick protecting Dak on the right side. Maybe that's where we would see a Lyle Collins or Jerron Christensen or Akeem Adeji, right? Like this is somebody that we like, but he needs a year in our system before he's ready to go.
Yeah, and maybe, the question becomes like, is that line of, do we try to practice squad this guy, or are we truly worried about him getting poached and we need to make sure we just like put him on a list somewhere, or figure out a way to like retain his rights so he's not left out in the open, right? So and they also have some of these new rules, practice squad a little bit too, so it kind of changes the angles here. But
I just don't think they want to expose him, because I do think there's something there.
No, and that's the thing too, is that like he's a tackle, so like it's not like other spots where those guys get a lot of attention when they hit the waiver wire, especially draft picks, right? So, and especially probably Cowboys offensive line draft picks, I would say. So he's not going to slip through the waiver wire, or at least you're not going to feel great about him trying to slip him through the waiver wire just simply because of all those factors that I just described. He would be much more likely candidate to be put onto these lists and deal with the kind of situation we're talking about than like a running back or a wide receiver that you liked, where there's going to be a ton of these guys on the waiver wire. All of them will slip through.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's talk about some predictions for the Cowboys during the 2025 season. We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can track all of your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever having to touch a spreadsheet. My family has used Monarch Money for about 10 months now, and it's unbelievable how much money they've helped us save. We're growing our wealth, and we're doing it because of Monarch Money. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That is 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with Vinny Iyer and Kate Maggiuk. Listen, it's NFL fantasy draft season. I can't wait. It's the best time of year. So listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, last question here from Dom. He wants to know, Landon, Marcus, you guys have seen training camp. You've seen one preseason game. Give us your predictions for the 2025 season.
Yeah, I'm still kind of viewing this as a 9-10 win team. Probably. I mean, it's a tough schedule. Every time you look at it, you're reminded that it's going to be a very physical, difficult schedule. And the timing of everything is kind of weird too. Like they've got like a real tough schedule early, and they've got some injuries that they're still kind of working through early, so they aren't going to be at full strength. So yeah, I mean, I still think 8, 9, 10. Those are kind of where I'm at with wins. I think it's I think enough to be in the playoff contention, and then we'll kind of see where it goes from there.
So what has to go right for them to be in that 10 win range where like now you're competing for a playoff spot? Like what needs to happen for them to get there?
I think if the running game gets on track, look, let's talk about what I think. I think what is good about this team, what is going to drive this team, is the passing attack with Dak and Pickens and Lamb. That clearly looks like it's going to be dynamite. Like
Yes.
that's what we've seen in training camp. That's played out. I think this is going to be a good pass protecting team, because I do think that's like what despite some of the pass rush stuff, if they can get Guyton back healthy, I think they're going to be able to protect Dak better than they did previously. And I think that it's certainly going to be enough that you're going to be able to get the ball down the field a little bit more. And if that is the case, and then the running game is able to take advantage of the box count changes that Pickens provides because of his kind of deep ball threat, and you actually were able to become an efficient running team as well, I think that ends up helping your defense. And like like all it takes is one of those kind of tumblers to turn over to start creating a snowball of positive momentum and kind of a team what's the word I'm looking, team friendly, like play team like synergy between the offense and the defense, and like changing the angle and the amount of time that the defense is on the field, which makes them more efficient, and all those things, right? So
to me, it starts with the offense, because I think this defense has a lot of moving pieces, including your best player not practicing,
That's right.
your corner out. If the offense can be really good and efficient out of the gate and take some of the pressure and stress off the defense, I think you're right. I think that's going to really help.
Complementary football is the word I was looking for. Yeah, I think that's the thing, right? If you can get one of these things going, and it could be the other way too. Like maybe the defense actually does come out hot. The pass rush is working. You've got decent. You get some corners back early enough. You take advantage of some folks with some errant throws, and suddenly you've got a defense that folks are worried about, and maybe that helps with kind of getting your run game on track a little bit, because the defense is able to play well. You're able to finish games out and just kind of work out your running game in the end of games while you're trying to run out the clock. So I just think you need one of those two elements to kind of hit a little bit to go alongside what you feel like you've got in a deadly passing attack. And then that will be enough to, like, I think not only, that blows the ceiling off, right? Like, I think then you can become even more than a 10-win team. You could become an 11-12 team. If this team was healthy and if the pieces all fit together, they have the potential, I think, to be a 12-13 win team if it all falls right. I just the chances of it all falling right, I think, is what you have to worry about.
Yeah, I think they're going to be about a 9-win team. Like if I had to put money on FanDuel on what they're going to be, I would say a 9-win team. I just don't know necessarily how that's going to be. Are they going to start the season off slow and start to rack up more wins as the year goes along? I actually think that's unlikely, because their back end of their schedule is way tougher than the beginning. I could see it being the opposite, where they start out, 4-3 on a good track, and then things start to go a little haywire when you play the Chiefs and, the Lions and the Eagles and some of these teams at the back end. But I think you're right. Like, to me, if Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, and George Pickens start the season hot and they're just scoring 30 points every single week, I think they're going to be okay, because I think the defense will eventually catch up. But if they struggle, it could be a long season.
Yeah, they have the makings for being good on passing on offense and defense. they need one of the two sides to be good on with the run, right? In order to kind of find a way to sustain and just to create half a dozen more paths to victory per game, right? Just opening up your opportunities of ways to win these games by being able to shut down another team's run game, or being able to dictate the terms of offense overall, and not being solely reliant on your passing game for moving the football. It will help you kind of continue to move the chains. It'll help you possess the ball, which will end up helping your defense. So they have to figure out a way for one of these other kind of lesser elements that's not the pass rush, that's not the passing attack, to kind of step up and add an extra element to this team.
And the last thing I'll say is they have to stay healthy. Like, they are already so beat up. You're going into the year without Trevon Diggs, without DeMarvion Overshown. Your left tackle's banged up. You've got other injuries at Kalen Carson at corner. Like, there's a tipping point here for the injuries. Like, if they continue to mount up and they have, a usual September, which is usually filled with injuries, I'm not so sure they're going to be able to survive that.
Yeah, I mean, I think injuries is obviously the huge part of this, and always the X factor in the NFL. So yeah, if injury hits especially if it did the way it did last year, where it all in one spot, then you could. It already kind of has a corner, right?
Yeah.
But the difference is that you're hoping to get healthy as we get into the season, not suffering injuries early on at this point.
And last year, I mean, every top player, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons, Tyler Smith, Zach Martin, they all injured. Deron Bland, they all had some big injury, awful injury luck. Hopefully that doesn't hit again. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Go check out the channel on YouTube. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. He is Landon McCool. I'm Marcus Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.